Interesting.
I left it here.
I've
So
got
maybe that's
another.
it.
No. This is chapter 4, which we're not on yet. You'll need that one for the Hebrew and that one for the English. We are in chapter 3, Midrash 9. If you're following in the book, page Memchet.
Bookmarks are great.
Sorry?
Bookmarks are great.
Bookmarks are great.
Memchet, Tet.
Memchet. Memchet, and it's Midrash Tet. Yes.
What is that called in English?
A page number?
No. What would be? I mean, does that correspond? Would that be called 9?
Yeah. So it's chapter 3, Midrash 9. So if you ever see.
So how do you? What I mean was, how do you get from Memchet?
A Memchet is a page.
Oh yeah, of course it is.
It's still a standard book. It's not like the
page numbers. The page numbers.
Talmud,
The page numbers are not standard.
Yeah.
The standard notation is Bereishit Rabba 3:9.
Do you know that was the right question? That was the question I should have asked.
I mean, like the Talmud's got
Exactly, that was the question I was
Yeah,
trying
but
to.
the Midrash has never been paginated as clear as deliberately as
Talmud.
As the Talmud. There is a classic printing of the Midrash, the Midrash Rabba, which has some of the kind of classic
Chapter 3.
Mefarshim on it, but I don't have it
Chapter 3, Midrash 9.
here. It's not very useful.
Yeah, so it is.
It's quite big. It's two quite slim volumes on very, very fine paper. It's about this size, and it has sort of that kind of classic sort of pagination. All right. Who would like to read?
Okay.
You want to bookmark too?
I mean, I'm just joining the queue, if that's all.
Go for it.
Okay, Amar Rabbi Shmuel bar Ami, the Rabbi Ami said, Mitchalat Brit Shel Olam, at the beginning. Mitchilat Brit Shel Olam.
No. Mitchilat.
Brito, thank you.
Briato.
Briato. All right, I'm going to slow down. Shel Olam. So at the beginning of the creation of the world,
Good.
Nitava Hakadosh Baruch Hu la'asot shutafut.
One more word.
Tonim. Tachtonim.
Pause there.
So he preferred to, favoured to.
The tail one.
Yes, was pleased to.
Appetite, right?
Yes,
God's appetite.
Appetite, yes, of course. To have a partnership with those below.
Right.
Is that right?
Yeah. Right. So in the beginning, God wanted to make a partnership with the lower things, which means us. So that this is, and actually, I think this is it's both very profound and I think completely necessary. If God didn't want to engage with mortal, corporeal, finite stuff, we wouldn't exist. Yeah, right. So from the beginning, God's desire was to engage with creation, and I think it's very profound because it's got something about hashgacha. It's got something about our ability to have an ongoing relationship with an infinite deity. It would not be possible were it not for the fact that God wanted it to be, and that the whole of creation is created in order to be part of a shutafut.
But shutafut implies equality.
Right.
I mean, it's not have a relationship. You have a relationship with a master to a slave has a relationship, but the shutafut seems to me is kind of people doing things together.
Exactly.
Arm in arm, isn't it? Side by
side.
side.
Partnership.
Correct.
Yeah, exactly. It is. But also, it's like a sort of. I mean, there is a perfectly good verb, isn't it? Is to partner with. So why is it? It seems that, or maybe it wasn't in this period. Maybe you had to say, la'asot.
I think
is that different from lishtatef?
That I don't know. What I think you are absolutely right to kind of point out is that it plays us higher than one might otherwise think. It's called sarach gavoa, the need of the higher. That God actually needs us. So Abraham Joshua Heschel's book, God in Search of Man, is coming out of that kind of quite essential rabbinic idea of that there is a need for humanity to be involved.
מה נפשך עם...
Ma nafshach. Now this is a Talmudic.
מה נפשך?
This is one of those Talmudic phrases. There's a really good dictionary of Talmudic phrases called Frankel, where all these kind of technical terms are there enlisted. It doesn't translate words necessarily for you, but it sort of, it's like, what's a gezerah shava? What does it mean? Like kama, like what's a mashal? All this kind of stuff. And man nafshach is one of those.
So
It literally means
what's your soul? What's your being?
no. What comes out? But the intent is so what? Like and here it means what's your proof? Man nafshach. How do you know from the beginning that God wanted to do that God wanted to do a shutafut? So in this one we're going to get a proof, but quite often man nafshach means what difference does it make that a verse has said one thing from what you might otherwise have thought? So you ought to be looking for something that is going to be said, which there is a slight kind of because the Torah verse has been worded in a particular kind of a way, nafshach mimena, it leads out from that therefore, right? So that's what we should be kind of attuned for. This is slightly unusual. Maybe it's a particularly midrashic usage. It's not quite the Talmudic usage, but that's the technical term, nafshach.
Okay, so manafshach im la'inyan ha'cheshbon, in the matter of the account. Is that right? Lo chayat tzarich לממר אלא אחד, שניים, שלושה, או ראשון, שני ושלישי.
Let's pause there.
I get it. Okay, yeah. When you say, is it either 1, 2, or 3, or first, second, or third?
So, im le'inyan ha'cheshbon, if the Torah was just going to teach you the order of days, then the Torah would have said either
1, 2, or 3.
1, 2, 3.
Or first, second, third.
Right. But the fact that the Torah doesn't say that...
It says 1, second, third. Oh, yeah,
right.
Sorry, I'm getting ahead of it.
Which we referred to previously.
Good. We're still doing Midrash on this slightly strange kind of counting of echad, ordinal, cardinal... no, which way around is it? Ordinal, cardinal. Ordinal, cardinal. Like, since it's showing that, right? So, yeah. Im le'inyan ha'cheshbon.
Yeah.
If it was just a count, l'hatzarech le'meimar would only have said 1, 2, 3, or first, second, third. Shema, but not.
Echad, sheni, shlishi. Et mana. Yeah, et mana.
Huh?
Yes, it's your
right. I have successfully.
I love that word. Everybody's hearing about it now.
I genuinely believe that the best translation of At My Heart is, huh?
Amazing.
Right.
I love it.
So this. It's a slight. The wording on this is slightly cryptic, but the point I think is perfectly fair, and it's a perfectly valid midrash thing to say, that it's because it goes echad, shnei, shlishi, ravi, chameshi, that shows you therefore that God wanted to make a shutafut, right? Wanted lehishtatef betachtonim with the lower forms.
Imatai para lahem hakadosh baruch hu lahalan.
How are you going to translate that question?
So, when is the Kodesh Baruch Hu going to something like give back?
Yeah.
Would it be?
Right, fine. Thank you very much.
Why give back? I don't get this.
Okay, so
why?
the language. I have to say the language is not easy. The sense of it is fine, but the language is not.
Okay.
It doesn't quite get you there. Thank you very much for telling me that God wants to make a partnership with. Let's now say us.
Yes.
No. Show me the money, right? When is there partnership between God and us? Like show me the actualization, the realization of this promised partnership, as if to say, the fact that there is a tree and the wind and the fish and everything else, fine. But where is this so much promised for partnership, right? So, Eimatai para lehem HaKadosh Baruch Hu. When did God pay them, hatachtonim?
Lahalan.
Lahalan,
Lahalan.
meaning
At the time of.
lock sit, right?
Opposite.
No, lock sit.
Lock sit.
Wait, no, do I mean lock sit? No, QV. Right? What is it when you want?
Truth.
Well, no.
Opposite.
When you put
Ibid.
it.
Quadrat demonstrandum.
No, it's kind of an ibid thing. But
Is
when
it?
is the ibid thing that we haven't already said it yet? It's coming in later. It's that footnote. It's that footnoting thing.
CF.
No. Let's compare.
It's one of those. I can't remember which one it is. I'm slightly aware.
Viz.
Viz. It's one of those. When is that
I
payback?
thought that was a comic.
Lahaman, meaning later on in the Torah.
Yes.
Right. So here comes the
Hakamat HaMikdash. HaMishkan.
Good.
Excuse me, at the erection of the tabernacle, the Mishkan. And we're back to this template again. Shnei Amar. And then we've got Bamidbar Zayin 12. Okay.
Yeah.
We're going to look at that now.
We don't really need to. We've got it right here.
Vayhi hamikriv bayom harishon et korbano etc.
Okay, so let's
So,
pause. Let's
Okay,
pause
so
there.
here it's written. It's hamikriv.
And so this is Nassau. We did this a couple of weeks ago.
It
That
is.
on the bringing in of the sacrifice on the first day.
First day.
Do you remember we go through all 12 tribes, the
yes.
chieftains of all 12 tribes? Each one comes on their day with their sacrifice. But
But that's not a Sunday. That's
it is the
that's
first
of
day.
Nisan, but it's the first of Nisan.
Right. It is the first day of the Hakamat HaMishkan.
Ah, it's the first day of the sequence.
the opening
Okay.
of the
So it is
Mishkan.
first of Nisan,
And
okay.
what is odd about this verse in Bamidbar and Nassau is that it says Vayihi HaMakriv B'yom Ha Rishon, not B'yom Rishon.
Yes.
It doesn't say
Yeah.
you can't really do this in English. It doesn't say, and on the first day of the opening of the Mishkan, they brought, I can't remember who comes in on the first day of the tribe of whatever. It says on Hey Rishon, on either capital THE or possibly even Hey being an allusion to God.
Yes.
God, no, God.
Oh, God.
Right?
Okay.
That somehow
Okay,
the
whoa,
first day of the opening of the Mishkan, which when you read the Torah is the most boring, like Rana, this one brings us and this one brings us and this one. But hang on, no, the first day of the Mishkan, which is of course the thing that we have built to bring this place for God's manifestation of the Shekhinah and the thing. It is the perfect shutafuti, partnershipy, human building, corresponding, right? So and boy, are we about to see this really fleshed out. But it was the dedication of the Mishkan that begins all of that kind of possibility. It's a really, really nice read. They've picked up this little wandering hay, and they've said that this is the payback or the actualization of God's desire to make a shutafut. How long has God been waiting? 10 generations from Noah, and the 10 generations from Noah to Abraham, whatever it is, 5 generations from Abraham to Moses, and finally there is the possibility of shutafut. So this desire that God has to be in partnership is waiting and is waiting and is waiting and is waiting, and finally they've built the thing, and this is why it takes so long to get it set up. They've got to have there's 49 of these, and it's got to be so long and so high, and this needs to be made of this, because this is the kind of container for shutafut b'tachtonim, right? The partnership with the lower people, and the stakes are that big, and the period of waiting is that long. But now that we are up and running, what do we see? What do we get? Let's do it, right?
I mean, later on, I don't know, much later on, when you have midrashim on the temple, would this come into it as well?
On the Mishkan, not we're not.
I meant the Mishkan.
We're a long way off.
No, I meant Mishkan.
So here we go. So on the Masorat HaMidrash, so on page Memchet, just on that turn your page around. Yeah, memchet. No. You, just turn it the other half side of where you are. Right. So can you see here in Masorah Midrash? Where else does this story Mitchilat Briaton Nitava? So this Midrash that in the beginning God wanted to make a partnership. B'Midbar Rabba Perik Gimel number Vav.
Right.
And it's also in Tanchuma on Naso. Well, you'd expect it to be in the Midrash on Naso. Psikta de Rav Kahana, it's in there as well. And it's in Yalkut here, and it's in Tanchuma there. It's in Pikudei, right? It's also in Pikudei when you're talking about how to build the Mishkan. So you can just see that. I mean, it's such an interesting idea that somehow, I mean, we'll see exactly how they're going to do it. That the opening of the Mishkan is a kind of a corollary to creation itself, and that you get those, I mean, we're quite used to this. That creation is always revelation, but here you're getting creation is
creation.
No, your creation is Mishkan in function. There's a Midrash is always doing this. These two completely distinct things, as far as you might think, are actually the same thing. That really there is a microcosm that creation is going to match on Mishkan. So what would we expect here? That we'll see a higher spiritual significance of a lot of the elements in the beginning of the Mishkan. So let's just come into that.
As if on the same day I created my world.
Okay, pause there. Rishon L'Briot. Yeah, so by him makriv bayom ha Rishon et korbanot Rishon L'Briot shel ha'olam amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Sorry, the what is that first? It's the same first as creation. Okay. Thank you, Angela. Someone else? What's we this?
Crowns.
Jason?
Yep, just 1 sec. Sorry. Kadosh Baruch Hu. Ke'ilu or do?
Tanei.
Tanei Eser Atarot Nataloto Hayom Rishon L'Maaseh Bereishit.
Pause there.
So the rabbis.
Good. We have this as a Tanaitic teaching, right? So this is an old one, but here we go.
Okay.
By the way, old midrashim tend to pop up all over the place. So that this long list of other places where this midrash appears, because it's been kicking around a long time. You know, when we talk about this as Torah Shabbat al Peh, when we talk about this as the oral Torah, what we mean is it didn't originally, it wasn't created to fit in as the last midrash in chapter 3 of Bereishit Rabba. It's a story that just sort of wanders around the Bet Midrash and people know it. And the Tana, in later rabbinic period, in the Amorite period, was the guy who knew all this kind of stuff off by heart, and he could kind of riff you. It's like, Tana, give us, what's the Tana thing on the things that the crowns that we? Oh yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Tana. And then eventually these things get not so much codified, get canonized into what becomes a literary work. But they're existing as oral forms before. They're existing as Tanaitic sort of bits of memory.
But I mean, that is the oral Torah, isn't it?
That is the oral Torah.
Sure.
Good. Absolutely. So what we are witnessing we are catching the oral Torah at a point when it has been written down. Because if it wasn't written down, we would have lost it. But you need to sort of feel your way back to its orality sometimes.
Okay, so the rabbis said, Eser Atarot Nataloto Hayom Rishon. There were 10 Atarot. Crowns, yeah. That were associated with it, or
that
on top?
Natal al Natilat Yadayim.
Right, raised.
Yeah.
Or...
So 10 crowns were raised Oto Hayom Rishon.
By him on the first day.
Yeah, and who's the him?
By God?
No,
by
L'Maaseh Bereishit. So the
L'Maaseh Bereishit.
Right. So the creation crowned Oto Hayom Rishon, right? The day of the opening up of the Mishkan, with 10 crowns.
Oto, I mean, as a sign? Is that what we're talking about?
No. Him. Ito. Each.
Okay, so
The pronoun for
And
third
it.
person
Okay.
object, singular, masculine.
Okay, right.
So there are these 10 crowns that floated around. So it was. Let's count them up.
Rishon the Malachim, the first
Good.
one for the angels.
No.
I'm sorry,
Kings.
for the for the kings.
Good.
There's no aleph in there. Rishon Lanasiim. So
We'll come back and do all of these in detail. But yeah, first
Okay.
one for the princes.
Rishon for the princes, and Lakunat for the
Good.
priesthood. Rishon LaShechina for
Good.
God, for God's divine presence.
Oh, sorry, I've just spotted it. Oh, so
Hold on.
So sorry.
Shenemar, as it says, Ve'asuli Mikdash.
Good.
Make myself. Rishon LaBracha, one for
Fine.
blessing, one for avodah,
6.
one for forbidden. Sorry,
Isur habama.
I don't know.
The forbiddenness of the bama or the bima. Right?
Okay,
We'll do it in a second.
okay. One for shchita.
Shon Shrita.
Okay.
Sorry. Next word. The Shrita
Batafon
in the north. Good. We'll see what's going on there.
Rishon Viridat Ha'esh. Viridat Ha'esh. The going up of fire.
The
Coming down of fire, actually. Shenemar Vatetze Esh Milifnei Adonai Vagomer.
Okay, I've got to wait.
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
at all uncommon. Slightly unusual that it doesn't come up to 10.
Well, 10 is like a nominal.
But they said
number.
10.
It's just something to hang
So
there,
I say
to
10.
hang it on. And
Yeah, because so a couple of thoughts.
Like the
Most
three kinds
of-
of mathematicians, yes. The ones that can count and
and
the ones that can't.
statisticians.
Oh, is it? Oh, right.
What usually happens is that you get told that there are going to be 10 and it turns out that there are 12, and that's very easy to understand because the other ones get slipped in, and sometimes you can even see which are the ones that have been slipped in later. This is quite unusual. Why on earth do they go for 10? It might be that there are 10 in other places. I haven't looked it all up in here, but the last footnote that it says here is see Shabbat.
Shabbat 87b, where there are several variations.
Right. So you can kind of see that everybody, once you've established, we talked about this before, once you've established the rules of the game, and we'll go back and we'll see what the rules of the game are, everybody gets to play, and you just get lots and lots and lots of stuff coming in, but slightly rare that you get told there are going to be 10 and there aren't. The thing that is on my mind is that kind of Aboriginal way of counting 1, 2, 3, many.
Yes, I was thinking
You know,
that.
right, or alternatively, what academics say about when you do the counting of the how many people are in the wandering in the wilderness. That when it says aleph, it doesn't really mean the same thousands that you and I mean when we think of thousands. We mean kind of units that are a lot. The kind of counting isn't so precise, but it's slightly odd. And I'm sure that that this is a corrupted list, and that the original list would have
In the
had 10.
Peric, it says 3 crowns, doesn't it?
Yes, it
Well,
does.
that's a different. No. Well, I think
that's a different thing.
That's
Alright.
a different thing. That's a different thing.
Is it possible
Right.
it's an incomplete manuscript? Is that also possible?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I mean, like every day,
They're just the
yeah.
list.
Can you
bottom of
see
the
where
list got
can you see where
lost.
the critical edition? No, of Bereishit Rabba. I think it's directly above that big Hebrew. I don't see it.
they're the same.
Is that Chalak Aleph?
Chalak Bet and
Yeah.
Gimel.
All right.
Here's Aleph.
Yeah. I'm not going to look it up. I'm sure that there is a 10. But you see, the problem is that we don't know which is the better manuscript, because it might be that this is the better manuscript, and that the ones that add up to 10 are later, because people have shoved in the other two to make it add up to 10, and that's the worst. So basically, when you're trying to age manuscripts, there are 2 rules that are largely followed. One is that the original manuscript is the simpler manuscript, and that errors or oddities or corruptions have despoiled the original manuscript. The other rule that you're allowed to follow is that the more bizarre manuscript is the better earlier manuscript, because it would never have got to that point and the one that's been tidied up and made to look nice and neat is therefore the later manuscript. So when we were at JTS, we were given by a Bible professor some song. There's a sort of folk song about a train. I can't remember exactly what it is, but and we were asked to sort of say which one of the different folk manuscript lyrics were the oldest one. And we were given one manuscript from the Grateful Dead. It's a sort of 1910, 1920s song. And we basically, working as a group because we were rather bored with the exercise, decided to prove that the Grateful Dead manuscript was clearly the earliest, as can be seen by And and our professor was rather cross with us, but gave us an A because we, so
For
like,
chutzpah.
it's like because you just don't know because it's all lost in time. But I mean, what you can do with this is that if you study the entire manuscript of the Oxford one as opposed to the Pisa one as opposed to the London one, you can go, you know what, the London one, it's just a much better manuscript. It's been so much, it just feels much more careful. Sometimes, particularly with names like Eliezer and Eleazar and Lazar, like sometimes people copy it wrong and you therefore get the wrong person. So you get in a midrash that clearly is set in a Palestinian Aramaic midrash, i.e. late midrash, you get Tannaitic names. Well, that's a proof that whoever was copying that manuscript didn't do a good copying job. So those kinds of things that you can sometimes decide that one manuscript is better, but you can't really do it just on a one-hit basis. All right, so let's go back and go through these. It is Rishon L'Malachim. You're going to need to put your... we're going to be working through some of this commentary here underneath, yeah. So, can you see where we are? So it's about. So if you see Tani is the beginning of the chapter, come to the end of the line and go down about four lines where it says Rishon L'Malachim, yeah. So Rishon L'Malachim, and Angela was just actually saying this. What is the date of the opening up of the Mishkan for business? It was Rosh Chodesh Nisan, and those of us who know our Mishnah Rosh Hashanah or know Mishnah Rosh Hashanah opens. There are 4 Rosh Hashanahs in the year: the Rosh Hashanah of this, the Rosh Hashanah of trees, the Rosh Hashanah there, and the Rosh Hashanah of kings is Rosh Chodesh Nisan. Which is to say that when you get your coins from this period. Or actually in the Book of Kings where it said, and it was in the 7th year of King, the Duda, those are all counted from Nisan. So whenever you actually become king, your first year, actually, I don't know whether or not your first year, I don't know if you're king for 0 years until you're king for 1 year, I'm sorry, I don't know that, but the moment when you move up from the first to the second to the third year, just like trees, and this is really the best analogy for those of us living in the contemporary world, just like horses. Regardless of the exact chronological age of your horse, on the 31st of December, the 1st of January, I can't remember, 1st of January. I can't remember. Like all horses become a year older, right? So Rosh Chodesh Nisan is Rishon L'Malachim. So it's a little midrashic, it's a little clever. My sense is it's not where this started. We'll see the ones where this start a little later, but good spot, nicely done. B'yom HaRishon. This is what we're trying to do, is make this day of the sanctification of the Mishkan truly primal, truly important, and with an echo to something which is larger than the moment of the opening of the Mishkan itself. So it's the Rishon of the Malachim, being the kings, right? It's also the Rishon L'Nisiim. It's the first one for the princes. Well, we kind of know that. That's exactly what it says in Nassau. On the first day, the first of these princes come up from the tribe of Reuven. It's Rishon LeKahuna. It's the big day for the Kahuna, because the Kahuna have been doing a bit of carrying around, a bit of schlepping, but they haven't really had kind of proper jobs. But now that the Mishkan is up come the Kahuna, and the Kahuna have something. It's a big day if you're a Kohen. It's Rishon L'Shechina. It's the first day that the Shechina manifests itself, because what's the whole point of the Mishkan? And now we're moving back from Bamidbar, where we actually build the Shechina, to the very, very beginning of the whole story about build Tasuli Mikdash
V'shechanti b'tocham.
Right,
That's why I squealed a little.
Yeah, right. The whole point of the Midrash is to build this place where God's presence can dwell amongst the people. So on the day of the sanctification of the Mikdash, God's presence is Shechanti b'tocham, is dwelling within them. It's also Rishon lebracha. What's the bracha?
Birkat Kohanim.
Yeah, very good, right? Birkat Kohanim, which of course is in Nassau. That once all these Nesiim have brought their offerings, it says, and at that point, Aaron said, Yivarecha Hashem v'yishmerecha. God said, Aaron says, may God bless you and protect you. It is the beginning of, it says, la bracha. Of course, that patach under there is not original, right? I mean, that's the editor of this particular book, but it is the first of the bracha. What is the bracha? Birkat Kohanim. Do you want to know my story about Birkat Kohanim?
Yeah.
Yes.
I was at a I don't know, you won't know, but I was at a seminarians and rabbis in training thing at Sacred Heart University, and there was sort of like 15 rabbis and 15 Catholic priests, and we were having a great time. And I said to one of these Catholic priests in training, do you use much Hebrew Bible in your liturgy? You've heard me tell this story.
No.
And he says, yeah, no, we use the Aaronic blessing.
The what?
Aaron. Well, you said what?
We use the Aaronic blessing.
Ironic.
And I was like, that's not a very...
That's like diagonally.
It's like, that's not a very nice way to refer to the Hebrew Bible. I was like, I'm sorry. He says, yeah, we use the Aaronic blessing. Oh, the blessing of Aaron. Got it.
Ironic. That's very good.
That's very funny.
Ironic. He was from Boston. Good. It's Rishon LaAvodah. Fine, right? Yeah, no, obviously. It's also Rishon LeIsur Habama. So one of the real cyclical issues that pops up all the way through first temple works is and they forbade the bamot, right? So various points, particularly when there isn't a functioning Jerusalem temple, there are these bamot, and you can take your sacrificial offering to your local bama, to your local shrine, right? I mean, what's the best example of that? The opening of Shmuel, the Haftarah on first day Rosh Hashanah, where everybody's bringing their sacrifices to Shiloh, because what's in Shiloh? There's a bama in Shiloh, and it's like you don't need to go all the way to Jerusalem. You can take your sacrifice to the bama, but at various points, and in God's preference, and certainly in the Deuteronomic preference. What do the academics say about Deuteronomy? Deuteronomy is very pro-Jerusalem, right? Very anti these local shrines, these local bamot. So that when the Mikdash was opened, it was the Rishon of the Le'isur of the Bama. It was the first day of saying, no Bama, there is one place. That this Jerusalem-centric attitude of the...
primacy of the...
Right. Of course, that only makes sense when you've got a temple, but it's anachronistic because we're talking about the building of the Mishkan, but at a time when, if you read the book of Deuteronomy as being late, right? It's being the times are moving backwards and forwards. Did that make sense? Shall I just do that again? The book of Deuteronomy, let's say, is written after the construction of the temple in Jerusalem, which allows you to knock out the bamot elsewhere in Eretz Yisrael, and this is being projected. The centrality of the one place is being projected back into Deuteronomy to talk about a time when the children of Israel, back into Numbers, to talk about a time when the children of Israel are walking around the desert outside of Jerusalem. But if you can increase the centrality of the one Mishkan, when that one Mishkan ends up in Jerusalem as part of the temple, you've already, you've made older that, and therefore you have succeeded in doing what you're doing in that kind of Jewish kind of reading. Okay. So it's Rishon LeIsur Bama, Rishon LeShchita Batzafon. Just to catch this in the.
What were they doing in the north? What's
they
referring to here?
So just at the bottom of page Mem Tet, 1.5 lines up from the you'll see Rishon LeShchita Batzafon. Yeah, can you see where I am? Yeah.
I'm not sure what it means.
Yeah, Shemitchila Hikrivu B'Bamot. in the beginning, you offered you brought your sacrifice. They brought their sacrifices on Bamot. V'sham ein din ka'ezem makom etzel hamizbeach yesh lishchot. At that time, or there was no law about where near the or next to the altar you would have to do your shechita. So you come to a bummer and you got your goat, you shecht your goat, foof. However, what's that you're doing?
I think it's a vav.
Vav, good, thank you. Vav. Umisha who kama mishkan, once you had built the mishkan, nishchatim kodshei kodashim butzafon hamizbeach davka. That when you built the mishkan, davka, you had to shecht in the kodshei kodashim, near the kodshei kodashim, which was on the north
side, yeah.
Right. So so it's a rishon. That's fine. You can see now how once you've got your few. They're trying to build the number up to 10, right? 10's a magic number, so they're slightly dredging, right? This is not a profound one. It's not as good. I mean, the good one is the Shekhinah, right? The good one is the Shekhinah, and along with that, the good one is the bracha. And when you're up and running with that, let's have a Rishon LeKohanim and Rishon LeNesiim. Oh, says someone, it's also Rishon LeMalachim because I've remembered that. You were well done, Rabbi. Such and so. Rishon LeMalachim. And can anybody go any more? Well, it's Rishon Korban. Obviously, but there's not much midrash in that. But let's stick that one in. Rishon Lezeh, Rishon Lezeh, Rishon Lezeh, and now we're almost up at 10. That's you can feel sort of feeling the orality.
In other editions of the midrash of this midrash, are there other rishons for a different?
I'm without having looked it up, I'm as sure as I can be. But don't forget, this is called a tani. This is called a tanei, rather. This is called an ancient teaching. So I think all the midrashic texts that we have post-date this Tanaitic teaching, which was originally oral. You can't reach further back than the written record. And you don't know whether or not one written record was copied into another written record, or two written records both come from an earlier place. So therefore, that the earlier place might have had more. I mean, we're slightly scrambling around. You have to be both quite rigorous and be able to put your hands up and not know where you're going. Right. And it's Rishon, the Yoredet HaEsh, and it's the first day of the fire coming down. So that's the really beautiful idea about the whole sacrificial system, that as you light your fire from below, God brings the fire down from above, and that there you have the shutafut. Finally, right? That it's your lighting of the fire below that meets the lighting of the fire above. It's a really, really impressive piece of elevating the spiritual richness of a very boring piece of Torah.
A bit similar to the Hasidic idea, isn't it? Where what you do on earth.
They get it. You're right. I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, the Hasidic ideas get it from the Kabbalistic ideas. The Kabbalistic ideas get it from this kind of stuff. It's very beautiful. It's very beautiful. Hadran Alecha, Perek 3. How are we doing for time?
1:15.
We are doing well.
To finish this one,
I'm sending around chapter 4. It wasn't. I didn't want you to have this one before, Jane, but
I saw it.
It just wouldn't have done you any good. Wouldn't have done you any good at all. There is English and there is Hebrew.
No, I don't need that.
Does anybody need anything?
Okay. Thank you.
Who wants to have a go?
it's fair one too.
Yeah, that's it. That like that. Anybody want to read? All right, I'll do it. Oh, yeah, Brian. Is that? You sure?
Sure.
Okay. Vayomer Elohim Yehi Rakia. Kativ Tehillim Kuf Dalad Gimel. Hamak Re B'Mayim Aliotav. Not surprising to see a citation from Tehillim at the beginning of a new chapter because of what kind of midrash brings citations? Starts off with a citation from Tehillim. Begins with a pay. The petichter. Petichter. Yeah. So this isn't a formal petichter, but it's a bit like a petichter. Here we go. As it says, Hamikre b'mayim aliyotav. We had this verse before. It's a really strange verse. A kareh is a beam. Yeah. Remember we talked about this before. And so therefore, we're translating this as God beamed using water. Which water? The upper water, right? And maybe here, perhaps when we think of a beam, we shouldn't be thinking just of the bit that goes through the middle, but the way that buildings look before you put any of the walls in and the roof in, and that kind of skeletal structure, right? That God puts up the skeletal structure. God builds the skeletal structure of the world using b'mayim al yotav, God's upper waters. Yeah, that's
so. What did we say? Hamakare. What is that?
Well, a kareh is a beam, B-E-A-M.
Okay.
But I think that we should be thinking of it as being as God's scaffold, as the kind of the internal scaffolding of the world. Scaffolding is the wrong word as well. How has it translated here? Let me just do this.
Like a skeletal, isn't it? Really?
Yeah, the skeletal structure of the world.
Putting the flesh on.
But
I mean,
in the sorry.
No, go ahead, Jen.
In the translation, the upper adjective applies not to waters, so it's not upper waters that he uses, but the upper chambers.
Oh, the upper chambers. Yeah, I think we looked at this.
Is that
the translation? I think
or?
we looked at this translation before. The translation is just shockingly bad because it's kind of slightly an impossible verse to translate properly. Here the translation, who layeth the beams of his chambers in the waters.
Where do you get that? Of his, where the what's
Aliotav.
But that's above. That's not chamber.
Loft. His loft.
Oh.
As in lift, as in up,
Yeah.
right? I mean, but for this to work, it has to be talking about. Well, so this is actually a vote for something that I'm usually quite down on. That the purpose of Midrash is to solve complexities in the text, right? Which I don't usually find particularly a helpful way to understand Midrash. But this strange verse in Psalms is so difficult to understand because aliotav could be subject or object, right? We don't get etz appearing as a golden rule, right? I mean, so normally if I would say, if you had Jason picked up Jeremy, you need Jason picked up et Jeremy to know that Jeremy didn't pick up Jason, because the Hebrew could be picked up Jason Jeremy, or picked up Jason Jeremy, right? So et usually can tell you which one is the subject and which one is the object, but by the time you get to Psalms, et is no longer a reliable guide. You can sometimes use the pointing, right? The grammatical pointing, but even if you can use the trop, right? Yeah. Even if you could use the trop, it's still midrashically allowed to read against the trop.
Right. And someone's anyway decided that.
And the trop is quite late. And anyway, a lot of the trop in Psalms is doesn't function by the same kind of rules as it does in Chumash. So but here you have this strange verse. This verse is being understood as the Mayim al Yotav, the upper waters. How do I know that? Because we are doing the story of the Mayim al Yotav, right? The Mayim al Yotav and the upper waters and the lower waters and the Rakia that's coming in the middle. Benohag Shaba Olam, Melech Basar Vadam. So what kind of midrash is this? Mashal. Good, right? Good, right? Mashal Melech. Not being introduced with the technical term mashal, but nonetheless completely mashal. In the way of the world, a king of flesh and blood, boner paltin, umikareb avanim, uva eitzim, uva afar. A king beams, right? A king builds his palace and beams it with stone, with but with where it says here afar meaning usually
Ash.
right. Here,
Oh,
I think to be
ash,
understood as concrete, right? I mean, I think to be understood as
Dust
Or dirt.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
could be
good,
dirt.
good. As in mottle,
Ah.
mottle. Right.
Wattle.
Good.
That's fine.
Wattle. Yeah, good. My Hebrew is better than my than my English. Right. So normally a king, when God, and so here Makare again, don't think beam, think building material. Right. A king of flesh and blood has to use quite strong things. Right. Stone, wood, concrete. I mean, the strongest things that you can find. Aval HaKadosh Baruch Hu lo kira et olamo ela b'mayim. But God doesn't beam his world, right? Or God doesn't construct his world with nothing other than with water. God uses water. So, very nice. Another one of these midrashim that proves how great God is by how qualitatively beyond Melech Basar V'Dam God is, right? I mean, there are many, but this is a very nice one. Shnema Makareh B'Mayim Al Yotav. That God made the world, that God beamed with upper waters. What did God beam? God beamed the world. And we've already set up... yeah. You know what I'm just realising? I'm just realising there's something else here, which is not allowed, but sometimes happens. No, I don't think it's happening.
Aren't they using the words, the Ketiv, Hamkareh B'Mayim El Yotav, as the proof text for Hamkareh B'Mayim El Yotav? I mean, they use it twice in the same.
Right, because
not really, but
good. Okay, good. I think this is a petichta on this verse, and that's it. So I think almost I would put a colon, right? I'm going to read Vayom Elohim Yehi Rakia according to this verse Hamakareh B'Mayim El Yotav.
And here's the
colon.
Yeah, okay.
But no Shnema Katonk. And I've now associated the verse from Tehillim with the verse from creation.
Okay.
And it's the fact that verse is introduced to me as being about the creation of the world that makes me think that it's not about the creation of God's loft or God's upper chambers. Because I've been as I encountered that. What do I do as I'm preparing? I read this, then I go to here, and I go, that doesn't make any sense to me at all. And it's already too late because I've already had my way of understanding that verse shifted forever by the fact that the rabbis have kind of structured it in that way. Very common. Do you want a bit more?
Oh, yes, sorry. Vayom Elohim Yehi Rakia B'toch Hamayim. So God said, let there be a Karmi word in amidst the waters. Rabbanan Omrin La B'Shem Rabbi Hanania Rabbi Pinchas. Good grief, Rabbi Yaakov. Reva in B'Shem Rabbi Shmuel Bar Nachman. Okay, who didn't speak? No way to translate. They don't do that. B'Sha'a she'amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu, at the time, at the hour when the Kadosh Baruch Hu said, Yehi Rakia B'toch Hamayim, let there be a firmament amidst the waters. Golda Tipa Ha'emtsaim, a drop grew. Excuse me, thank you. In the middle of it, a drop in the middle of it grew. Is that right?
Yep.
V'na'asu hashamayim hamachtonim, and let us.
Because one second, just do 3 more words.
Oh yes, u'shmei shamayim ha'elyonim. And let us make the heaven, the lower heavens, the heaven of the lower heavens.
So let's make a rakia in the midst of the waters.
Yes.
So what happens? At that point, a drop in the midst of the waters, Gadla,
Grew.
It doesn't say Gadla though.
Yes, it does.
It says
Galda,
Galda.
sorry.
Galda.
Galad is...
You're right. Yeah.
You're right. Galad.
You're right.
What
No,
does
you're
Galad
right.
mean?
You're right.
Kresha v'kafa.
You're quite right.
Spread out and stretched.
Yes.
Thank you.
Jason, I have bad dyslexia.
Yeah.
The letters won't stay in the right place, and
Right.
I
So
need
this,
people like you in my life.
so this
Okay.
drop
So Galda.
stretched out,
Yes.
and na'asu
Let us
hashemayim
make- yeah, let us
hatachtonim
make it- Yes.
u'shmei shmayim elyonim. And as a result of that kind of like, you know what? You've just okay.
Sorry.
No,
No,
not
it's
sorry.
good, it's good, 'cause
Not
it's-
sorry. It's going to help me understand. I now correctly understand my little proof text. They've got a proof text in from Shmot 39, which makes a lot more sense.
Okay.
Yeah, you can imagine it was almost like it was sort of beaten flat, like you would beat out a little bit of gold to make it. Just in case that's what the proof text says. It is what the proof text says. Okay. And so now you've got this rakia, and therefore were created the upper, the lower, and the upper, right?
So is this were created Shemayim, the Tachtonim, and
No.
No.
Hashemayim hatachtonim
So
Hashemayim
it makes a
Hatachtonim.
Shemay
and Shmei Shmayim
Shamayim
ha'elyonim.
Ha'elyonim.
That's a typo. There's some typo going on.
There is.
What
yeah.
Shmei Shemayim?
The heavens of the upper heavens. Shemei Shemayim.
So why is it a typo?
No, it could be right. I'm
Yeah.
just saying.
Yeah, absolutely.
Shemay
The heavens
Shemayim.
above
But
them.
it's that double word
It's like
emphasis.
Malchim Hamlachim.
Right.
So how do they differentiate between the upper heavens and the?
But this is upper.
Because
It's so
Well, there's a
upper.
rakia
The
in
middle,
There's a rakia.
the middle
There's a
was
comma in
stretched, and
between.
the upper. So it's the upper and the lower. It's a sandwich.
Yes.
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 Right.
With Kami in the middle.
I think it's an expression, right? Shemei Shemayim is an expression
Yes.
meaning the great heavens.
Right.
And
And the
the
Shmei
other
Shmayim are not the same as like what's the name of this
Kodesh
thing?
HaKodeshim.
What's this thing that's just got to Jupiter? What's it called again?
Oh.
No.
Juno, right? Juno is not in Shmei Shmayim. Like Juno is puttling around the Shmayim Atachtonim. Good luck to it, and may it continue to do its work perfectly well. There is a rakia beyond the entirety of all
The known
creation,
sky.
right? As in what is outside
Well,
the universe.
So that's interesting.
Says the astrophysicist. There is nothing beyond. You can't get beyond the universe. There is nothing which is.
And that's Shemaim
So-
Tachtonim. That's still.
yeah,
The,
yeah,
galaxy,
the lower
the whole galaxy.
the whole universe.
Because
Oh,
it's not the
universe.
realm of God, but it's interesting. Shemei Shemayim, maybe the Shemei is Hashem.
Yes.
The Shemayim of God.
The
realm of that. That's
So what did
probably
Rav
weird.
say?
So, Rav Amar, I've got a
There's a
blur
dot.
here. Lachaim, is it? Lachim. Lachim. Hayu. Nasehen. Bayom Harishon. Shnei Shu. Okay. So he said, I'm not doing well with this. Lachim.
Lach. You say something that it's lach,
Yeah.
wet.
Yeah, it is. But yeah, I thought that, but it doesn't make sense here, is it?
Well, let's see what's going
Okay. They were okay. So they were wet from the creation on the first day.
on. Mm-hmm. And on the second day,
Vishne Karu Yirakia.
karshu. And on the second day, it congealed.
Aha.
So, I mean, you think of your crystalline,
Yeah,
so the first day, the creation was still a little bit sort of
Mushy.
mushy. Which, by the way, is kind of what the astrophysicists tell us.
Say that.
Yeah,
Did
like
they? They said
yeah, I
it's
mean,
mushy.
it was all a bit mushy, and it cooled, right? It crystallized, it became solid, it became cooler, it became more set, right? I mean, that's the kind,
But I'm still a bit confused. Are we talking about the Earth? Are we talking about the solar system? Are we talking about?
on day 2, the planet doesn't exist.
I haven't got
Right.
Earth yet.
We haven't
Okay.
got it. So we're talking
You've
about
still got
we're in
space. You're talking about space.
Okay.
It's closest, isn't it? I suppose. Hirakia.
Yeah, so the verse, Yehi Rakia, it means
it got stronger.
Yechazak Harakia. No. Sorry. The Rakia is the subject.
Yes,
The Rakia firmed up
firmed up.
the world,
Stronger.
the universe, the space.
Yeah.
Right. In other words, it was all a bit flobbly until God said, "Yechazek harakia," right?
Aha.
That the rakia firms it all up.
But there's no object of Yechazak.
No.
That's not helpful, Jeremy. So Rabbi Yehuda.
You know, there's water washing around.
Sorry, yes. Rabbi Simon Amar Yeaseh Matlit L'Rakia
We've had that a number of times. As the verse says, right?
Yeah.
Kamosha Katuv, always followed
Yes.
by a verse.
Yeah. What is
Right? So
Yeaseh
Rabbi Yehuda bar Rabbi Simon says, make a, you know what this word means,
Talit.
Angela? Make a talit as a rakia.
Yes.
So what's the talit? Well, what's the
Yeah.
rakia? Think of a talis. Think of, I mean, you know, and don't think too religiously. Don't get too excited. But
Okay.
yeah, it just means a sort of a stretched out bit of cloth, right? That there is this rakia, and this is what the verse means, which says Yarku et pachei hazahav. Does anybody know where that verse comes from? What that verse is about? 39. How's your Torah la'am, Angela?
Oh God, don't. I'm just.
You don't need to
I
call
don't
me.
do
You
chapters.
don't
I
need to
do.
call. You don't need to call me God. It's
I just don't do chapters all that well. Let's think. What is it?
back end of Exodus. What are we doing at the back end of Exodus?
Yes.
We're building the Mishkan.
Yeah, we are building
Right.
them. Of course. Yes, of course. Yeah, I know that.
Yeah,
but I'm just thinking of this
39,
particular thing.
39:3. And they beat the gold into thin plates.
Ah, yeah.
Right. So here we go. What is the rakia? It's like they had this gold and they hammered it out flat. I mean, you know, like the way that people work gold.
Sure.
Until, you know, and that's what. And so rakia, with the root resh kuf aleph,
Yeah.
is a verb which means
But it's very good for iron, no?
Reish kuf. Sorry. Wow. Reish kuf ayin. Both rakia and this verb in
Yeah.
Pekude is about the banging out of something to make it flat. So here you have your little drop of water,
Yeah.
betoch hamayim, being kind of like thumped out to be a stretched out talus, a sheet, and it's going to be the separation between the upper and the lower heavens. We're being taken right into this kind of slightly weird stuff, but hey. Adkan, sorry.
So they would have had what we call a talit today in this period.
No, I mean a talit in ancient times simply means people were wearing. That's what you wore, right? You walked around wearing a four-cornered garment, and that was a talit. Like, the interesting thing about it was the tzitzit. That was the sort of the novel thing. But we shouldn't think of it. You know, we have shirts and trousers which are normal clothes, and a talus which is special. It's just
They wore
talit.
togas.
Talit on its own. Talit on its own is just a four-cornered garment.
Yeah, well, not even. I don't even know if it's
Poncho
four-cornered.
slash
It's like it's a
kaftan.
piece of cloth. Adkan, thank you
Lovely.
very much.
Stuff.
To you.
Thank you very much.
See you next week.
Thank you.
Next week,
Well, it's something new in this
hospital
one.
next week.
And this one's given us.
Investigations in the national stuff.
The one he's just given us now.
Spinning in a wheel upside down. So I won't be here. Sorry. I waited
Oh, I should
6
have
months
put
to
this
do this appointment, so I'm going to take it.
Well, you got a book as well.
What?
Sorry. sorry.
Brian, would you pass me the phone?
So you're continuing the same way, I guess? Oops, sorry.
I mean, of course, it won't be the same without you. But
Here, I'll take this back.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you.